I think the details are great and we know why they're there, but we need to win the election, basically, or change the system.
Well, we sure do need to win the election. And let me tell you, let me give you a replay of the conversation where I sat at a table with as close to the captains of industry as we had in the state of Colorado around the table, and political pollsters and political decision makers. And what I took away from this conversation is that the political and power leadership will move something forward as soon as they can get a poll that says that it is, well, 69% of the people support it. Maybe not 69. I think the number was, they consider it at 59, but what they really want is 63. That the poll also reveals that people believe that government is efficient and effective, and that the solution proposed is one that would have a direct impact on at least 50% of the people. That's what it's going to take to get political leadership to do anything. That is why I joined forces with Senator Heath to say it's going to be a cold day in hell before those three things align, and we got to do something. Because if we sit around and wait for other people, these smart politicians, to tell us what we got to have, we will do nothing ever. And I stand by my decision to go forward with something, because this conversation about, and the intensity of the conversation now about the impact of cuts would be completely different if we hadn't gone through 103. As the Senator and the Joint Budget Committee make cuts in K-12 education, I'm going to be at the Capitol building with a shirt that says, "Don't blame me, I voted for 103. Because we have reached a point that there ain't no perfect solutions out there. I mentioned in my presentation that it is so much easier to put together a coalition of no than it is a coalition of yes. Yes involves each of us saying, you know, that's not how I would do it. That's not my favorite way. I can see problems with that solution, but I'm willing to live with it. That takes a whole level of political leadership that we don't have yet. And it is not for, please understand that I know that, and we tried that, and we spent most of 2000, half of 2009, and all of 2010 trying to bring that coalition of people together, and they're not there. And they told us that things they needed was 59% of the people saying that they'd vote yes, more than half of the people saying that government was efficient and effective, and more than 50% of the people saying that this would directly affect me. So you tell me when that's going to happen, because I don't believe anytime soon.
That's very hopeful.
Thank you. Yeah.
But realistic.
Yeah.
We have in the next legislative session an opportunity, actually. If the property tax exemption, the senior property tax exemption, is forced into the budget by the Republicans in the House, the governor does have the ability to refuse to sign the budget if you were willing to exercise the visceral fortitude and say, sorry, but I'm not signing the budget if that is in it, and if we have to make all the cuts to make room for that $96 million cut. What would that do? That would create a platform on which to have a hell of a discussion, would it not, about not just that issue, but all of the issues that you're talking about, Senators and Ms. Hedges tonight. And I think that one of the things that we need to encourage our governor to have is the visceral fortitude to force that kind of a discussion. The question that I have for you guys is, moving forward from here, we've got the elections in 2012 coming up, and then again, of course, in 2014. And we can talk a lot about what the problems are, and a lot of us know, although none of us know quite as much as Ms. Hedges knows about what the problems are. A lot of us know a fair amount about what the problems are, and discussions like tonight really elucidate an awful lot about that. The question is, what do we do about it in these next and upcoming elections, especially given the limitations we have with a single subject in terms of constitutional amendments, etc. So is there any time to that you can address where we go forward from here in terms of what we do about these immense difficulties that we're facing? Thank you.
I think that's a compliment. I appreciate it. You know, knowing the most about weird things, I'm never sure whether it's a compliment or not, but I know you intended it that way, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. What do we do now? We ask again. And we keep asking. And I hope that the thing that we ask for next, let me just lay out the way I sort of see the world coming together. There's a lot of people who criticize the decision-making around going for a tax increase in an odd-year election because the conventional wisdom is that older people vote more frequently in the highest percentage of turnout in odd-year elections tend to be older people, and older people tend to vote more conservatively and tend to vote against tax increases. Proposition 103 proved part of that. They proved that, in fact, older people did vote in a higher percentage than are represented in the population. But I'd like to say that we lost 103 because we lost the old folks' vote. We lost Proposition 103 because we lost our base. And the sad thing to me about that is every conversation I've had about a loss or even about a win in Referendum C, when I sat in a room with the pollsters post-election and we talked about the results, they've always started the conversation in exactly the same way. You've lost your base. You don't have your base. We lost in Denver. We barely won in Boulder. We can't blame that on Republicans or conservatives, folks. That is not the fault of the anti-government, anti-tax individuals. How do we go forward? We figure out what a coalition of people looks like that is willing to say yes to something. There's only one way that's going to happen, and that's if the governor decides that that's what he wants to do. There's no other way to do it. I have been a long-time advocate of individual political action, about the small group. We don't need big money. We don't need big leaders. We don't need to have, we can do this on our own. No, we can't. We will move forward with a revenue fix or a big constitutional fix when and if the governor of whatever party that is decides it's time to do it. What can we do to help get the governor ready to do that? He's going to be traveling around the state looking for input about where to go. Governor Hickenlooper genuinely believes that things should come from the ground up. He has said that he has been very successful in raising revenue in Denver, and that's come always because they were bottoms-up proposals. If ever there is a time for activism, it is in the next 6 to 8 months as the governor travels around the state asking people what should we be doing about the fiscal situation. I don't think they've announced yet what that's going to look like and what those meetings are going to look like, but I do believe that that's going to happen and that's on their agenda. We need to pack those rooms. The governor ran around during the election saying that the Colorados have no appetite for taxes, and as much as I hate to admit it, he must be right. What else do we conclude from this election? The point about speaking to the choir couldn't be more true. You guys are here because you care. The folks who don't care and don't know and don't want to know, and I fully respect their right to not want to know or care, quite frankly.
And they shouldn't vote.
But they do vote. And here's another interesting irony in all of this, and this is going to be, it's one of those weird things, and I don't know how to conclude this, and people are going to hear this and they're going to think some weird stuff. But when we decided to go in an odd year, I didn't realize that it was going to be an all-mail ballot. There was a time when an odd year election election was good for us because only the motivated voted. Now, I am not standing here sounding like our Secretary of State, suggesting that some people shouldn't have the right to vote. That is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, as we empower our vision that everyone ought to have the right to vote, it increases our responsibility to get to everyone. And somebody said, why don't we do a better job of that? I have been busting my butt trying to figure out how to do that. Somebody give me $15 million, I will win a tax election for you. But let me just say one other thing about this whole talking to people. As I said, the only thing less popular than raising taxes is cutting taxes. How much money did we spend on that to get that no vote on 60, 61, and 101?
5.
I think it's closer to $7 million. It's all about money. I don't like it. I wish it wasn't. But if we want to communicate to people who now we have said it's important that they know and that they have the right to vote, we got to have a big old pile of money. And that's a struggle. Because so many of the people who put that big old pile of money in there are people who are not interested in a graduated income tax, who are not interested in a progressive measure. So I don't know, but it's going to take leadership from whoever's sitting in, whether it's 2012 and this governor, 2014 and a different governor, or the same governor, I don't know. But I really don't think we can do this without the ultimately, at the top, political leadership. Doesn't mean I don't think we should try. I'm not saying I won't be back again, but I don't think we win until we have political leadership at the top.
We actually have almost 8, well, we're past 8 o'clock, I was lying. But I did want to take a quick moment to introduce State Representative Crisanta Duran, because we're sitting here in her district. Thank you, Crisanta, for coming. And we'll take one last question, but now I understand why they hand out cards at those conferences for your question, because we end up getting a lot of statements. If you could try and just give us a question, that'd be great, because I'm the winner of our last question of the night.
I think I was next. I've actually got a couple of quick questions, and I will make them quick. But on for Senator Stead, well, first of all, I want to recognize both these senators because I want everybody in the room to know there are only these two are 2 of 7 legislators out of our 100 that have sworn off PAC and special interest money, which I think helps in this on enterprise zones, this series in the Post, which you alluded to if you weren't talking about directly, but I read in the Post that 6 different state auditor reports have come out and said there's absolutely no evidence that this program has ever generated a single job. So my first question is, what more evidence do we need? How many state auditor reports do we need before we have enough evidence to stop having 70% of the state in an enterprise zone and handing out this corporate welfare? And let me ask my other question real quick, and then for Carol, and you guys, you two, if you have something to say in this, but Carol, you alluded to, for one thing, you talk about the powers that be say, well, when 50% of the people say that government's efficient and effective, that's when something that will make them move and support something. And related to that, Carol, you alluded to, I think, a second DU study that talked about this, that one of the things that needs to be done, one of their recommendations or suggestions or whatever, was that we government needed to make value more visible. As some of you know, I have my own ideas on how we can do that, and we tried to do that. I tried to do that with Senator Aguilar, working with her to get a bill through the legislature last year, which was killed in a Democratic committee. But anyway, I wonder what you meant by, what you think, how do you interpret that? How should we all interpret that, and what can we do about it?
I'm going to take a stab at that, because I think that's actually an example of where this study, in my mind, is full of platitudes, and like Carol said, doesn't offer a lot of the path forward. And I've been trying to rack my brain. I wasn't part of the study, and I actually haven't read the thing in great detail. I've read some of the overviews of it, the executive summary. What does it mean to make the value government provides more visible? Here's one of the ways I can sort of envision let's start making every state highway and interstate a toll road. And everybody that pays and has a little transponder on their windshield will know that they're paying, will see on their credit card that they're paying. And let's make those roads as smooth as butter. And every road that you don't have to pay to drive on is going to be gravel roads and full of potholes. Will that make the value the government provides you more visible? I mean, it's an extreme example, but actually it's one of the things that's actually feasible. I think it's a horrible idea, but you know, what else can we do? I mean, people, this is the real problem, is I think they're right. I think citizens don't see value in what the government provides because we take so much for granted. You know, clean air and clean water. You know, do you stop and think about what that costs? Now, supposedly those regulations are killing jobs now. I actually think they've created a lot of jobs. I think we've created a lot of industry around clean air and clean water, and those are important investments in the future that are putting people to work. But people want their whole market basket full of government services, whether it's smooth highways or clean water or traffic signals or what have you. Daycare inspections or cantaloupe that's been inspected, on down the line. People want all these things. They just don't want to pay for it, and they don't really realize the ways that they are paying for it. And so, if making the value of government more visible means putting that price tag on everything, turning every road into a toll road, I would hope we wouldn't have to go down that path. I hope there's a different way to make people remember why it is we consented to be governed in the first place and why we pay our taxes and what we're getting for it and the value that we do get. Because I agree there's a disconnect there. Your first question, enterprise zones. This is one of the things I was alluding to. It's really hard to do away with something that an army of lobbyists is telling you is creating jobs, even if the data says it isn't. An environment where most uninformed, sort of detached voters think that creating jobs should be job one at the state capitol. And so, there's a whole clash of conflicting messages there about, why we have these programs and are they putting people to work? Are they keeping businesses located in local communities? Are they incentivizing investment in capital, which is what some of the enterprise zone credits are triggered by? Obviously the program has some problems, and obviously it's been something no legislature, no matter who was in control, could muster the political will to get their arms around. And so instead we go after the exemption for soda pop and candy bars, because that was easier. But there's a problem there.
Can I talk about enterprise zones for just a second too? I know we're running late. One of the things that, and I'm not just bummed out about losing, but I am kind of bummed out. But one of the things I've had to disabuse myself of is the notion that those of us who consider ourselves on the political spectrum liberals own. We all got on this. We are all absolutely convinced if you just give somebody a piece of data, it'll change their minds. We have got to stop thinking like that.
Truth shall set you free, right?
Yeah, I mean, truth has nothing to do with data. But I have been struggling with that darn enterprise zone thing. I mean, I can't even tell you how I am labeled in a lot of conservative blogs, etc.
Well, I'll tell you.
But it doesn't make any difference. And it's because of this truth that I hold as true. The definition of waste is a service or an activity that I don't benefit from. And you amalgamize everyone's individual truth about waste. How the heck do we ever get consensus about anything? And that's the challenge and the interesting part of democracy in my mind. Is that if you are living in a small community and you're part of that 70% of the state that has been called a blighted enterprise zone qualified, you don't want to give that up because you know you're already fighting like heck to get some employer to come there. The analysis on this is absolutely, without question, that it doesn't make a darn bit of difference. But it's not just the high-paid corporate lobbyists. If it was just the high-paid corporate lobbyists, I think we would have done something about this. It's every city, it's every town, it is every resident of every community that says, I want it more, and I deserve it more. We'll never get rid of enterprise zones. We will continue to let the hole in the bottom of that bucket continue to go.
I hope not.
And one of the reasons, when I heard the senator say something, one of the reasons is because a lot of nonprofits argue we've got to have those things. Because that's where we build our housing for our low-income housing. It's cheaper to build a group home in an enterprise zone if we don't have to pay. It creates jobs and it doesn't pay tax credits. And you know what? I don't care. Let's do it. But let's recognize what we're doing. Giving somebody a tax credit is giving them a tax cut. It is creating favored tax status. I spend my whole life looking at tax and budgets. There is nothing wrong with doing that. That is a great way to incentivize behavior. It doesn't create jobs. Particularly state tax credits do that. The evidence is overwhelming that it doesn't create jobs. But if it makes us feel better to do it, fine, but let's be honest about it. And that's why I was so excited when we were very active in the work that Senator Stedman talked about when he talked about this transparency work, our reporting work. We move money out of our schools into the pockets of developers on a regular basis. And nobody ever knows about it because it doesn't go through that complicated JBC process. It happens invisibly. Those are off-budget expenditures. We call them tax expenditures. We don't report on them. And then, to me, to complete the absurdity of this circle is that the Denver Post decides to write a story about this. And what is the conclusion that most people read? Government is screwed up again because they're giving away our money. Instead of saying, oh my God, what's going on here? Stop that. The analysis stops at, well, we knew that. That's what happens. We know rich corporations, developers get what they want, and the rest of us don't. So that's why I'm not going to give any more money to government. Because they're not paying their fair share. We are in a vicious, vicious cycle, and I don't know how the heck we unwind it. Value in government. I want to send you to the value in government. Please go read. There's two things I would really urge you to read. One is the Jim Grismer study, the Strategic Issues Panel study, and the other is the Independence Institute's budget proposals. Please go to the Independence Institute and read that analysis. And then talk to everybody you know about whether that's the Colorado that you want to live in. Okay? What Jim Grismer says about value in government, I agree when you read that little summary that I read you. You know, that's what he says in his little, that's the executive summary. His solution is that we create a Citizens Value Council. And that we break down everything that government does into a line item that can clearly articulate who pays and how much we pay for every service, and what value that service returns to each and every one of us individually. Now, first of all, I don't know how you do that, quite frankly. But the other thing that struck me when I was reading the report is, isn't that what the legislature does? Aren't they actually the ones that don't we have that process in place already? Where they evaluate whether or not the dollars that we invest return value to us? One of the other things Grismer says I think is really important is that he wants us to stop, he wants government to put citizens' value in the forefront. Good idea. I don't think many government, there's much of it that's out there working only on government's behalf. I think that's another one of those wonderful myths out there. There's some really wonderful work done by an organization called Demos. It's another place to go look if you're spending time on the internet. DEMO, with a little thing across it, S. And what they talk about is value in government too. I think everybody's coming to the same conclusion. That's our problem. People don't see any value. They don't understand what they're getting. They don't understand the bargain that they're getting. But they take exactly the opposite role or position than Grissom. They say